Hey, welcome to a special Saturday edition of the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Uh, Running it on a Saturday just because things got a little too busy on Friday. Didn't want to throw it up on Friday evening. I know everybody was out running around doing things before, for those of you in the upper Midwest, before Snowmageddon comes in. So, hoping everybody goes out, does supply runs, be safe, all that good stuff. But, I want to really just address one question on this show. We're going to make this just a one topic show. That's kind of a rare thing. Maybe it ends up being a little bit of a shorter show. Sometimes we go 20, sometimes we go 30 minutes. Maybe this one goes 15. Maybe I just really start talking about it a lot. I don't know. We'll find out. But hear me out. The question is, and it's going to be unpopular in some regards, but was Ohio State's shortcomings this season, losses to Oregon, losses to Michigan, was that a bit of a blessing in disguise for the overall product for Ohio State moving forward? And hear me out. 2013, Ohio State loses the final two games of the season, including one to Clemson, goes out, makes some changes, comes back 2014, wins the national championship. 2016, Ohio State has its issues, has another bad loss to Clemson, makes some major defensive changes, and while Ohio State did not come out and win the national championship in 17, the changes were significant in terms of changing around Ohio State's fortunes. And now you have 2021, I have to think about that for a second. Ohio State loses to Michigan, loses to Oregon, and goes on. And what do we see here in 22? Now we've seen the changes. In come coaches Jim Knowles, Perry Eliano, Justin Fry, Tim Walton. I mean, those are the four we know of at this point. I mean, two of them have not been announced at this point with Eliano and with Walton. I mean, that may change in the time from when I'm recording this to the time you see it. So don't say, well, Kevin, wait, you're wrong. No, just at the point that I'm talking to you, I have not heard it as official, but it's official. What happens if Ohio State, the Oregon loss happened, but what happens if Ohio State comes out and beats Michigan? And then, I think that most people outside of the state of Iowa would say that Ohio State would have come out and beaten Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. And then Ohio State assuredly would have gotten into the college football playoff. Ohio State wouldn't have drawn Cincinnati. They wouldn't have put the two SEC teams together. So Ohio State would have drawn an SEC team. What happens if Ohio State loses it, but loses it close? You lose that game 28-21, 28-24, 24-20. Regardless, do you have the latitude at that point? And of course you do. You're the head coach. You can do whatever you want in a lot of regards for that. But do you really have the latitude to go medieval on your coaching staff in terms of just turning it over? We're seeing four changes, at least. Are you able to do that at that point? Or do you need that setback to have more of a reason to be able to make those moves? Now, of course, there's going to be loyalty to your coaches. I mean, you spend a lot of time together, close quarters, families, no families. You don't want to go out and just upset people's lives. I mean, fortunately, in the coaching community, one coaching job begets another coaching job, and there's really very few instances where guys are just, okay, well, now what? I'm ready for my next assignment, and they're suddenly selling stereos at Best Buy. If you get into coaching, there generally is a path for a while. You may have to take a step back or two steps back, but we're not talking about guys that are now really in dire situations. Matt Barnes got a DC job at Memphis. We'll see what happens with some of these other coaches that are moving on. We'll see what happens with Greg Sturawa. There's another job, or if he needs to take some time off to get himself medically right. I mean, let's not forget he's been dealing with some serious back issues Mobility's been an issue. I mean, when you're a line coach, it's very difficult to just stand back and say, yeah, just go do the thing. I mean, you've got to, he's not out there running the drill himself, but you've got to be able to do some of that. So, how do you make those moves if you are a finalist, or if you're in the Final Four for college football, coming off of a national championship appearance? And I'll get into 2020 here in a second, because I think that's important too. I think that you need to have a little bit of that adversity, and nobody wants. I mean, we all live in the moment. No, no, no. I want it now. All I need is an opportunity to get into the 14 field and see what happens. Well, kind of saw what this defense was, and this defense was flawed. I think that's the easiest way I can put it. It was flawed. I don't know if Alabama or Georgia were particularly explosive offensively. You could make the argument of saying that, especially Alabama, I mean, you never want to sit there and predict injuries or whatever. Alabama was a very different team after it lost Jamison Williams. But even with JMO coming back, if that were going to be the case, you sit there and you do everything you can on there, and then you hope to be able. I mean, you hope to be able to stop the Alabama run, but Ohio State, certainly wasn't able to stop the Michigan run. It did a pretty good job against Utah in slowing down Tavion Thomas. Maybe not as great of a job with Pledger. Certainly not a good job in slowing down Cameron Rising, the quarterback. But that's why I think the game could have been close. I mean, could Ohio State have won either of those games? Sure. I mean, the offense was insane. And if you're in the college football playoff, you're not going to have those opt-outs. You're just not. You're playing for a national championship. Everybody wants to have their legacy. Everybody wants that ring. So maybe we certainly wouldn't have seen Marvin Harrison go off for 3 touchdowns. Probably wouldn't have seen as huge of a role for Jackson Smith and Jigba. But, so I'm willing to argue with you whether or not those games would have been winnable. But for the sake of my argument, let's say they just lose close. How do you go in at that point? It's like, well, we were, top 4 team. We were right there. Sure, Ohio State finished 5th in one poll and 6th in the other poll. So, we're really kind of getting down into the fine details, but there is a defining line. There is a clear defining line of who is in the playoff and who is out of the playoff. And if you're in the playoff, that means something more than if you're out of the playoff. So how do I think you can make 1 or 2 changes. I don't know if you're going to be able to go in and make wholesale changes at that point. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this, because I'll be very curious as to how you see it. But I want to bring in 2020 as a little bit more of a talking point. Ohio State makes it to the championship game, obviously does not perform very well against Alabama. But do you make the changes after that season? How do you make the changes after that season? If you look at that, Ohio State really was able to survive a season where you don't know if you're playing week to week. I've told the story once, and I'll tell it again. When that Illinois game was canceled, I was already in Illinois. I was pulling into Champaign, Urbana. I was actually staying in Champaign. And I was pulling up, and Griffin Strom, who was working with me at the time, was kind of monitoring the phone as I was driving. And let's be safe. Don't be playing on your phone, Noon, while you're driving. He's like, we have a problem here. I'm like, what? And he's like, I don't think this game is going to happen. Because the news started to kind of come out. It was trickling out. And, this, they're not going to have this guy. They're not going to have that guy. And I remember sitting in the parking lot of the hotel before checking in. I mean, the world hadn't completely really changed yet. I mean, it was changing, but it hadn't changed. I would have been on the hook for the hotel night regardless. But I'm sitting in the parking lot going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, we ended up checking in. We ended up sitting around waiting to go to dinner. Everything kind of got whacked at that point. Well, we're like, well, we're here. We may as well go have dinner and just hang out, and then we'll come back. We'll drive back the next day. And I got off topic there a little bit, but it's just to say that you didn't know from week to week. I mean, Ohio State had 3 games fall off the schedule: Illinois, Maryland, and that team up north. So you prepare and you lose this. I mean, and look at the Michigan State game. They had to go and do that with really largely a second team offensive line, and they go and they perform pretty well. So you get through all of that. You play the Clemson game. You exercise a lot of demons in that game, and then you get whacked against Alabama. Do you make changes at that point? Congratulations on enduring one of the most challenging seasons in program history. Here's your reward: a pink slip. You're fired. Goodbye. I mean, I don't think you can do it at that point. And a lot of people now, with hindsight, are like, they absolutely they should have done it then. Well, you have the hindsight of seeing the 2021 product and saying, well, that didn't work again. But I don't know how you make the changes at that point where you're like, well, we're obviously we're close. 21, we'll get this, we'll get this sorted out and we'll get over the hump. Well, they didn't get over the hump. There were the issues against Oregon. They make some changes. Things start to rectify a little bit. And then we start seeing some of the same issues. We start seeing some of the hockey line changes to where they're trying to get the perfect personnel out there. There are times they get out there, they're not set. It doesn't look like they know what they're doing, and they get victimized. The 4th and 1 against Utah, where Cameron Rising ended up doing the house call 50-plus yards. It didn't look like they knew what they wanted to run there. And then they didn't get guys down to the ground. So confusion about the play, confusion about how to get the guy down to the ground, and Cameron Rising being a dude. I mean, all of that is kind of an issue right there. So some of these changes needed to be made. But if the circumstances were different in 21, and I'm not saying, if you win the national championship, you don't get to do that often. I'm not sitting here saying Ohio State, oh, well, I mean, they just had to play in 2 games if things would have gone their way. Sure. But that's a lot of ifs right there at that point. I'm playing the if they got by Michigan. And because I don't think that Iowa would have really created an issue as offensively challenged as Iowa was last year. Iowa's weakness was offense. Ohio State's weakness was defense. Ohio State's offense was significantly better than Iowa's defense. Net gain, Ohio State. But, I think that things happen for a reason. And, try telling that to the coaches that are going to be out. I mean, I'm sure they're all going to find good situations and wish them the best. But things sometimes happen for a reason. And, as the kids say, in terms of on social media, when a kid gets injured, a minor setback for a major comeback. Now, if you talk to Ohio State fans, losing to Michigan at any point is not a minor setback. That is a catastrophe. That is not a minor setback. But could the 21 season, in the grand scheme of things, be looked at as a bit of a minor setback for a major comeback in 22 or 23 or 24? Then, of course, you're going to have the issue with some, with some of these guys. Do you keep your staff intact? And and that's a good problem to have down the line. Nobody's going to come out and get coaches that they're like, well, he's okay. Let's offer him $900K to bring him over to our program to be okay. I mean, you're going to go after the guys that are really good. But I think that moving forward, that these changes, and again, we're not sure if they're done. It's not like Ryan Day has come out and issued a statement saying, we're set. This is what our 22 staff's going to look like. That's not on Ryan Day to do. That's not on Ohio State to do, to say we're done. I mean, that has to be vocalized internally amongst the team. You don't want to be some coach hiding under your bed, not answering your phone, not wanting to get called into the coach's office to find out that you're being sent down to Albuquerque, that you're being sent down to AAA. So, you have to do that there, but you don't have to do that in public. I mean, I think that there will be a time and a place. I think once we get to signing day here in a couple weeks, if they're done, they'll say, okay, yeah, we've made these changes. Boom, 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 boom. These were the changes that we've made. We're very happy. This is our roster of coaches. But, we don't know yet. So I have a lot of people asking me, well, Kevin, are they done? I mean, I could see another move happening. I really could. I'm not going to attach names to it. I'm not going to attach positions to it, but I think we could see another move happen. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at this point. There were a lot of people I talked to who were like, if Ryan Day doesn't blow this thing up, I'm out. I'm done. First of all, no, you're not. You're angry. You're reactionary from what's happening. You're back. You're going to be back. And I know one or two of the people that sent me those messages are loyal viewers of this show and are probably going to send me nasty text messages. I'm not going to name you guys, but you know who I'm talking about. So Ryan Day is not going to make any changes. And then, they go and they make what appeared to be the 1-for-1 change, Jim Knowles in and Matt Barnes out. And a lot of these people too are like, well, that's a good start. But, you can't necessarily, you can change the order and change one card in your poker hand, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. And then things happen, and then we get into Thursday, and we saw some things go down when, we learned that Kerry Combs was on his way out, when we learned that Al Washington was on his way out, and we'd already seen the Jim Knowles and the Justin Fry moves. So, once again, I say that's all predicated on the season they had last year. And just hear me out on this too, Buckeyes fans. If 11-2 warrants these types of changes, how good do you have it? How good does Ohio State have it? How good is that machine running if 11-2 is considered to be a disappointing season with a Rose Bowl championship? With a Rose Bowl championship and a co-Big Ten East, whatever, they can celebrate that crap up north. I've just said it just for the sake of being honest, but the Rose Bowl championship, that was the prize. I mean, I went to school at Ohio State in the late 80s. I started in 89. Was there in the early 90s. I would have given my long, luxurious hair to see a Rose Bowl at that point. Apparently, I gave it up for something else, probably a cheeseburger. But, I gave it up at some other point. But Ohio State has another Rose Bowl title. I mean, they went a long, 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 long time without it. And I know now with where we are in the college football playoff, that isn't necessarily what you want unless it's a semifinal game. But if things go according to plan, you could be out in LA in 23. Championship game is at SoFi as things stand right now. So start looking at airfares. I think Ohio State's going to be pretty good this year. But what are your thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts. Maybe I will do a follow-up show if I get enough good comments and not a bunch of people call me an idiot. If I get enough good comments about it, maybe we'll do it live. Maybe that's what we'll do. We will follow up this show next week with a live show, with a Big Me Kickoff live show. This will be a major topic that we talk about. But be sure to leave me comments on that. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching us on YouTube. That helps us out a bunch. Hit the bell. Don't miss out on a single show on the entire channel. If you're listening to us on iTunes or Google Podcasts or Spreaker or any of that, be sure to subscribe. Leave us a 5-star channel or a 5-star review there. That helps us as well. That helps more people hear the show. It means a lot to me. We've gone about 19 minutes, so I think that's good as we do a special weekend show. Don't want to keep you too long. Stay warm. Stay safe. Have fun. I'll talk to you very soon here on the Big Me Kickoff.